In this video, I'm going to briefly talk about credit scores and credit cards, and then I'm going to do an example where we calculate the average daily balance on a credit card. And so a credit score really is just a number that rates your credit risk. And the higher, the better. So if you have a high credit score, it means that you're at a lower risk, and that can help you in many ways. It can make it easier for you to get a loan, rent an apartment, or even lower your insurance rate. So I'm sure you might even know someone who had to get a cosigner, have someone cosign on a loan because their credit score wasn't high enough. So a cosigner is another individual that does have higher credit that signs on the paperwork, also basically saying that if the person who has low credit can't make payments, that they can also be responsible for those payments as well. And there are many websites online. There are apps that will help you check your credit score if you're interested in finding out what it is if you don't know. And so then in terms of credit cards, there's a big difference with credit cards and loans. So credit cards are what we call open-ended credit. So it's not usually like a fixed amount that you're borrowing. Sometimes there's a cap. So when you apply for a credit card, you might see, a cap of $10,000 or $5,000, something like that. But it's open-ended in terms of, you can use it, to buy whatever you want within that, limit. And there's no fixed payments and payoff date. So there are due dates where you're supposed to pay your credit card, but you don't have to pay off the whole card in a certain amount of time. And so many credit card users make the minimum payment on a credit card. And yes, it's important to at least make the minimum payment, because if you don't, they're going to charge you usually fees, and it will hurt your credit scores. But it's really important, if you can, to pay off as much as you can, because credit cards are typically what we call high interest debt. So they charge you much more interest than a typical car loan or home loan or even a loan from a bank. So it's really wise to pay the full balance on your credit card every month if you can. And if that's not possible, is paying as much as you can will keep you from paying large amounts of interest. And if you have more than one credit card, trying to pay more on the credit card that has higher interest will save you more money in the long run. So the smaller the payment you send to the credit card company, the longer it will take you to pay off, meaning that you will pay more interest, because the longer you take the pay, as long as you are having a balance on your credit card, the credit card company is charging you interest. So if you're taking longer to pay your balance off, then you're going to pay more interest on that amount because you're paying for a longer time. And so in minimum payments, how do those work? So typically minimum payments are either a percentage of the balance. So that could be like 2%, for example. So whatever your balance is, you pay 2% in a minimum payment. Or a fixed amount. So you might be asked to pay, $25 each month for your credit card. And that's an example, or whichever is greater usually. So between the percentage and the minimum or the fixed amount, $25, which is just an example. That fixed amount could be any amount of money. Whichever is greater, then that's what you pay. And so there are some pretty good videos here that I've linked showing how minimum payments work, and then more information about credit card rules and minimum payments that you can find here in your notes. So I definitely encourage you to check those out if you have time. So let's jump in to an example with credit cards. So we're going to do an example where we're asked to find the average daily balance of a credit card the finance charge for the month, and then the new balance at the end of the month or the beginning of the next month. And so to do that, we've got a bunch of different, we have a bunch of steps. This is a long problem. And I'm actually going to scroll down in a minute, so we're not going to be able to see this the whole time, but hopefully you have a printout or you have this you could jot this down somewhere else, and just keep it handy when you do these types of problems. So lots of steps, but I promise that once you get the hang of this, hopefully it won't be too bad. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just scroll down here so we can see our problem. So Vivian's credit card statement showed the following transactions for August. I would highly recommend when you do these problems, if the problem doesn't already come formatted in a chart like this, I would make the chart yourself. So if these are just listed out without rows and columns, then I would make a chart that looks like this. And so the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to compute the number of days. So this first row means that on August 1st, there was a balance on the credit card of $2,065.50. And that was the balance on August 1st through actually August 6th, because on August 7th, a new purchase was made. So you can do a couple of things. You can, if you want to quickly just subtract and do 7 minus 1 to get 6, that's one way to do it. Or you can actually just think about how many days that would be. So if you think about, like, August 1st, August 2nd, August 3rd, August 4th, August 5th, and August 6th, and then the 7th a new purchase was made, so that balance is changing. And so if we just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you can see that balance was in effect for 6 days. And I can actually just transfer this first balance over here, so $2,065.50. And so we're going to go ahead and we're going to compute the days for all of these. And so this next one was in effect from the 7th, August 7th, through actually August 11th, because on the 12th we made a purchase. And so I'm just going to do 12 minus 7 to get the number of days there, and we end up getting 5. And we could count too. We could say the 7th, so we could say, and I could go ahead and erase these previous ones here. We could list it out. We could say August 7th, August 8th, August 9th, August 10th, and August 11th, and then you could just count. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then the 12th to the 18th, so you could do 18 minus 12, or you could list them out. So we end up getting 6 days for that one. And then this next row, we make a payment on the 18th. So we're going to do the 24th minus 18. So 24 minus 18, and we end up getting 6. This last row, and you'll notice in the list of examples, or not the examples, the list of steps, it does warn you to be really careful when you calculate the number of days. You do need to know, well, the first thing you need to know is you need to know the number of days in the month. So for August, there's 31 days in the month. If you're not sure, you can look it up. And then you have to be really careful about calculating the days at the end of the month, because if you use the subtraction method, notice that every time we subtracted the day after the last day, so the day that purchase or payment was made. So it was actually one more than we needed. So you could do a couple of things. You could subtract, since there's 31 days in a month, one more than that would be 32. So you could do 32 minus 24. Okay. And get 8. If that doesn't make sense, so if you're saying, well, why would I use 32? I can understand that. The other thing you could do is you could list it out. So if on 8/24 a purchase was made, then that balance is in effect, and then it's also the balance on the 25th, the 26th, the 27th, the 28th, the 29th, the 30th, and then the 31st. And I know that all of these days that balance stay the same because there isn't any other row that tells me that a payment or purchase was made. So the 24th was the last time a payment or purchase was made. And so then if I count those, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That gives me 8 days. So if any of that, the subtraction was confusing, then just list out the days and count and you should be good to go. And then last but not least, this is really important. You want to make sure that you add up the days column and they add to 31. The number one mistake students make on this problem is messing up one of these days boxes or even a couple, and that could be avoided by just adding these up and verifying that you get the days in the month, because if you don't, then you need to go back and fix these. So we add all these up, we get 31, so we're good to go. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is we need to go down, well, not go down, we need to go to this first row, and we're going to compute the balance times the number of days. So we're going to take the balance, because we're trying to find the average daily balance. So to find the average, basically you're going to have to add up the balance every single day and divide by the total of days. But instead of making a list of 31 days, we're going to use multiplication as a shortcut, and we're just going to say, okay, this was the balance, and it was the balance for 6 days, so we're going to multiply. And when we multiply those two numbers, so we get 2,065.50 times 6, when we multiply those two numbers, we get $12,393. So $12,393. And you could just, you don't necessarily have to show your work there, but I like to write it so we know what we're doing. And so then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to come down to the next line, and you have to really pay attention whether or not it's a purchase or a payment. So in this case, it's a purchase. So if you're purchasing something, then we need to add these two numbers. So these two numbers here are being added. So you're going to, I'm just going to put a little arrow. We're adding these. So you're going to take 2,065.50 and you're going to add $250.56, and we get 2316.06. So that's the new balance for August 7th. And then I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to multiply that. So 2316.06 times the number of days, and that's already in my calculator, so I can just do times 5. It makes it a little simpler, and then I get $11,580.30. And so then I come down to the next row, and I'm really careful to note that this is a purchase. Actually, I should just use the same color so it looks like the last line. So I'm purchasing something again, and so I'm going to add the 142 to my balance. So I'm going to take the 142 and I'm going to add it to my previous month's balance. So 2316.06 plus 142.03, okay, gives me $2,458.09. That was the balance for 6 days. So I take that number, 2,458.09 times 6. So I just do times 6 in my calculator, and I get 14,748.54. Okay, so this is a tedious problem, but as long as you're careful, you should hopefully be okay. And so this next one, now this one I'm going to use a different color, and you could even use a highlighter for these. So payment, that means I'm going to take off. So I'm going to take this previous balance, 2458.09, and I'm going to subtract $75 off that balance because I made a payment. And so my balance now is $2,383.09. And that was the balance for 6 days. So I'm going to take that number and I'm going to just say times 6. And I'm going to write down that answer, $14,298.54. And then last row, I made a purchase, so I'm going to underline that in red since those are all in red, and I'm going to add that 130 to this previous balance. So 2383.09 plus 130.23 equals, and then 2513.32. So this is the balance at the end of the month, and it's important. I'm actually going to circle that because we actually need that. It's going to be really important in a step that we get to in a minute. So we have that balance, and that balance is in effect from the 24th all the way to the 31st. So we said that was 8 days. So I'm going to take that and multiply it by 8, and I'm going to write that answer down here. So 20,000 106.56. And then what we're going to do, the next step, we're finding the average, is we're going to add all of these values up here. So all of these are going to be added together and we're going to find the sum. And if you add those all together, you should get 73,126.94. And if you want to check with your calculator, you could always pause the video and check that out. Okay, so now that we filled out the table, we can take our steps to find the average daily balance. So for the average daily balance, we're going to take our sum that we just got, so 73,126.94, and we're going to divide by the number of days in the month. So this is going to change with, in different problems, because every month, well, not every month, but, months can have different days. So you just have to pay attention to the month that you're working with. So in this case, it's August. We're going to divide by 31. And if we divide those two numbers, so 73,126.94 divided by 31, we end up getting an average daily balance of $2,358, and you always want to round to the nearest cent, so two numbers after the decimal place, so 93 cents. And when you get this answer, I want you to ask yourself, does this make sense? Check out the balance column. If I got an answer of let's say I got an answer of 5,000, I would know immediately that I did something wrong, because this balance should be around the balances that you see in the month. It should not be outside of that range. So this seems reasonable for an average daily balance. And then for B, it asks us to find the finance charge of the month. So to do that, what you have to do is you have to take the interest rate per month, and sometimes credit cards will calculate interest on a daily basis, but it's actually, the calculation is very similar to this. In this situation, we're going to do it monthly. So we're going to take the average daily balance, which is $2,358.93, and we're going to multiply by the interest rate. So this is average daily balance times the rate as a decimal. So if I move the decimal 2 spots left, that gives me 0.015. And if I multiply those two numbers together, I'm actually going to put in 2358.93, not the exact number that I see in the previous row, just because I want to use what the credit card company would use. And when we have excess decimals, that might throw off the answer. So times 0.015, and so we get a finance charge of $35, and I'm going to round this to the nearest cent, so 38. So that is my finance charge. And then lastly, so for C, I'm going to come down here, it asks for the new balance on September 1st. So new balance September 1st. So what you have to do is you have to take the last month's, or not, the balance at the end of the month. And that's what I circled here in orange. That is the number you want to take. I'll tell you, one of the biggest mistakes, aside from making a mistake on the days, students will take the average daily balance and add the finance charge to that. And that doesn't make sense, because the average daily balance, this isn't the actual balance. So this is just used to calculate a finance charge. The person who owns a credit card never should actually be responsible for paying this exact same amount of money, because this isn't a balance that they had at any point in the month. So we want to take the balance at the end of the month, so that's 2513.32, and we're going to add the finance charge to it, so 35.38. So I'm just going to take 2513.32 plus $35.38. And then I get a new balance of $2,548.70. Okay, so hopefully that made some sense. I know this problem is long. There's a lot of steps. If anything doesn't make sense, you could always, rewatch this video. And as always, just contact your instructor if you have questions.